Good evening to everyone. Welcome again. And today, speaker is Dr. Ann Speckhard from Washington, D.C. She's currently professor of psychiatry in the School of Medicine at Georgetown University. And actually, she's also director of the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism in Washington, D.C. She told me that I will keep very, very short about her. And so we will talk about today, talk about the defectors, ISIS defectors. Who are they? What are their motivations for joining and also for defecting the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq? The defectors are important also to understand the ideology of the ISIS, also the their real message, how they are organized, what's their ideology, specifically their brutal ideology. And these defectors, normally we will see some videos from Syria, because Dr. Speckhard normally did many interviews with these defectors, and it is very interesting to listen them, to understand how they are attractive and why these defectors are they are losing these foreign fighters. Okay, I would like to thank again. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Does this work okay? Do you hear me? Do you hear me back there? Okay, good. If you stop hearing me, just tell me if you want to hear, that is. Okay, so anyway, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I have two of my colleagues with me, Dr. Ardian Chaspovsky and Dr. Allison McDowell-Smith. So we're all Americans, came to visit you. And I lived in Brussels for 7 years, from 2000 to 2007. Taught at Zalius during that time in the psychology department. And used to always come over here and wonder what it was like. It looks wonderful. I hope you're enjoying your studies here. So tonight we're going to be talking about our project, Breaking the ISIS Brand, the ISIS Defectors Interviews Project, and just a little teeny bit about me. I've been interviewing terrorists forever. Actually started when I was living here in Belgium a long time ago, and have interviewed about 500 of them. And the reason for interviewing them, I wanted to figure out literally what makes them tick. How did they get on the terrorist trajectory? What kind of things made them want to join once they were on it? What kind of rewards were they getting that kept them in? Could someone have prevented it? I'm a psychologist, so I wanted to know, if we had some good procedures in place, could we prevent that? And also, could we intervene? And then I got the opportunity by my government, the Department of Defense. They asked me, will you come to Iraq? We have 20,000 detainees, 800 juveniles. We want to make a de-radicalization program. Do you know what that is? And that was kind of a new thing back then. And I said, yeah, I know what it is. And they have it in Singapore, they have it in Malaysia, they have it in Saudi. And at that time, it was all imams trying to talk prisoners out of being involved in Al-Qaeda, militant jihad, and doing that using Islamic scriptures and creating some kind of friendly rapport with them. It wasn't working so well, so I designed part of that program for DoD, and we made it a psychological program along with Islamic Challenge, which was new at the time. Now I think all the programs are doing that sort of thing, not because of me, but just because it made sense. And anyway, so let me start to tell you a little bit about us. So the ISIS Defectors Interviews Project started about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And Dr. Yalla was also invited tonight, Dr. Ahmet Yalla, our Turkish colleague. And at the time we started first interviewing in Turkey with Syrians that had run away from ISIS. They'd been in ISIS and defected. So Ahmet got those interviews, and we did, I think, 33 Syrian interviews. And then we were, at the same time, we're going other places in the world, because I was already addicted to this, and got a couple interviews here in Belgium of people who have been in ISIS, a couple others in Western Europe. Already joined, we went to the Balkans, interviewed in Kosovo, interviewed inside the prison in Kosovo, and recently we're in Kyrgyzstan, interviewed 2 girls that were part of, or 2 young women that were part of ISIS. So at this point we have 43 interviews of people that have been in ISIS, and we call them the ISIS defectors, but the truth is some of them that came back to Europe are returnees. They're not defectors. They haven't given it up. They still believe the dream, still wish for an ISIS caliphate. Others of them were interrupted. The ones in Kyrgyzstan were arrested after their husbands had killed police and been killed themselves when they were under flight. And they were possibly defectors in prison at the point that I spoke to them, but they weren't defectors at the time they got arrested. But anyway, again, we're asking the same questions. What put you on the Taurus trajectory? How did you get into this? What kind? How were you recruited? How were you approached? What made you want to join? Looking for, were there points of intervention? So for instance, for the 2 girls in Kyrgyzstan, one of them had married a guy that was into militant jihadi beliefs, and he pulled her further into it, and let her know that he was part of an operation that was going to attack the police. They both believed in the caliphate, and she didn't admit to me, but the police told me, or the prison officials told me, that she was ready to do a suicide attack herself, and because I'm a psychologist and our team wants to know, what are the points of intervention? Could that have been stopped? And so we asked her, what could have stopped you? You saw these guns under the bed, your husband was preparing to attack the police, and maybe you agreed with him, maybe you hated the police, but weren't you scared? And the funny thing was she had said she didn't see the guns, but then she admitted, yes, she was very scared when she saw the guns. So it was kind of a little bit humorous in that regard. But I said, what could have stopped you at that point? Who could have intervened? Would you have ever told your Mom, I'm in over my head? And she said, no, because my marriage was hidden, that she had a sexual relationship with him was hidden. She slept at home at night and just had a marriage at romantic interludes with this guy, but was informally married to him. And then I said, what about the police? No, the police were their enemies. And I asked her, what about if you had seen some sign with the helpline? Would that have made a difference? And she said, yeah, maybe I would have called it, because I was scared. But instead she's in prison, and she'll probably be in prison for a good long time. But anyway, those are the kind of questions we're asking. And some of what I'd like to tell you is things maybe you already know, but ISIS declared their caliphate. They followed after Al-Qaeda. ISIS is basically Al-Qaeda 2.0. And I just saw a new paper coming out from Charlie Lister that says Al-Qaeda is now taking over the Syrian rebel movement and growing stronger again, which everyone expected, but ISIS might be a flash in the pan, and Al-Qaeda would be the longer-term movement. And when we had the opportunity to speak to Abu Qatada, who's the spiritual father of Al-Qaeda in Europe, according to some people, he told us exactly that. We have a long-term goal. We try to win the hearts and minds of the population. Doesn't it sound a bit familiar to some of the Western rhetoric? And we have our vision of what would be the world governance at some point. And ISIS is terribly brutal, and ISIS tried to do it fast and maybe a mistake. But anyway, all these groups are battling out for their space and their power and their territory. ISIS is probably going to lose their territory, but they are currently winning in the digital battlefield. And this little screen that you see that says, do you want to join the worldwide jihad, predates all of you. Because you come to school and you're probably looking at your email right now, right? You can look at it, you've got wireless, you can look at it on your computer, you can look at it on your phone. But it used to be that people went to internet cafes and looked at their email, and that was one of the pop-up screens in Schaerbeek. Schaerbeek's the suburb or the commune in Brussels where they put together their bombs for the recent airport attack. And we see these magazines, Defectors and the others, Inspire, that are put out by Al-Qaeda and put out by ISIS. And what we've seen in the last years is that ISIS is very prolific in putting out videos. And think about it, it used to be Osama bin Laden putting out his video, or after we took him out, Zawahiri putting out a video. But these people had to literally sit in front of a camera like this, make their statement, think about what they wanted to say. They didn't have really good video editors to put some background and, really jazz it up good. And then they had to get somebody to physically carry that videotape, smuggle it out, give it to Al Jazeera, and it would show up on Al Jazeera, and our news stations would pick it up, and the world would find out what Osama bin Laden had to say. It's not true anymore. These people are really adept. They're taking advantage of all modern technology, just like you have. And Baghdadi makes a statement, his video editors fix it up, put whatever he wants in it, and he hits publish. He doesn't need a journalist anymore, doesn't have to deal with Al Jazeera, doesn't have to smuggle anything anywhere. He just puts it up on the internet, it's out there. And all the movies that ISIS makes, they put out like a big blanket, and they see who responds. And nowadays with social media, this is a really cool tool. I can find out if maybe your professor, he retweets something that I tweet. Maybe Ardian likes something that I liked. Maybe Allison takes a video that I put together and puts it up. That's all really nice if you're just doing Facebook. I mean, you probably a lot of times look at how many followers do I have, how many likes do I have, who particularly liked this picture. And when somebody puts a comment, maybe you write back to them and say, oh, I'm glad you liked my picture. Well, ISIS does the same thing. And we know there's a journalist in France that pretended to be interested in ISIS. She named herself Anna Erlal, and she posed as a younger girl in a headscarf, and she put herself up on Facebook and reposted a video of a French jihadi fighter that was in Syria. The same day, he said to her, oh, you liked my video. Would you like to meet? Let's get on Skype. Let's talk. Did you see how handsome I am in it? Would you like to know more about us? Maybe you're interested in coming to Syria. I mean, boom, like that. Same day. We had a girl out on the West Coast that was on her Twitter. She wrote, why would ISIS behead a journalist after James Foley was beheaded? And ISIS answered her, honey, it's a revolution. We have to shed blood for a revolution. We're building a better society. What else would you like to know? Are you Christian or Muslim? I'm Christian. Oh, that's wonderful. Did you know Islam is the completion of Christianity? No, I didn't. I'm a Sunday school teacher. That's really good. You should be strong in your faith. Could we tell you a little bit about Islam? Sure. Keeps going, keeps going. Suddenly she's got all these Twitter friends. Could we Skype? Sure. Suddenly she's Skyping with people. And this kid lives with her grandma. Her mom's an alcoholic. She's lonely. She's out in rural nowhere land, has no friends. Suddenly she's got all kinds of friends. She tells them, probably to please her new friends, I decided to convert to Islam. Lovely. Don't go to the local mosque. They'll tell you lies about Islam. We'll teach you about Islam. Could we send you some books? I'll send you a headscarf. Oh, we're going to throw some chocolates in with that. And after, it's seduction, right? After she's seduced, then they say, could we send you a plane ticket? Why don't you bring your brother too? Same thing with Anna Ruff. She was a journalist, so she's faking it, but she said if she was the young girl she pretended to be, this guy was like a stalker. And he's like, let's get on Skype, let's get on text. Where are you? Where are you? I want you. And whenever he's talking to her, he's saying, you really should come to Syria. You should really practice a more conservative version of Islam. Could I teach you? If you come here, you'll be rich. Do you know we have really nice houses? You'll have a beautiful house if you come and marry me. You'll be rich. We'll have a great sex life. Oh, you will have to wear a burqa. Are you wearing a burqa yet? You should wear a burqa. Where were you an hour ago? Where are you going to be in an hour? Can we Skype? On and on and on. For a whole month. Are you finally going to come? Good. Bring a girlfriend. Empty your mother's bank account. Don't fly through Paris. Come to Amsterdam. When you come to Amsterdam, get a burner phone. Call me on this number, and I'll give you the final instructions. And these guys know what they're doing. They're looking for anybody that endorses their materials, and anybody that's showing vulnerabilities, anybody that they can strike up a dialogue with. And when they do, they find out well, Artie, and you don't have any girlfriends. We've got lots of women here, and they're really beautiful. And you know, we have sex slaves too. You need a house? We've got housing for you. I can send you a plane ticket. Why don't you come? And it's seductive. So let's keep going. So with all this interviewing terrorists, what did I learn? I would say basically I learned that there's 4 things that are almost always necessary to make a terrorist. The first is a group. There's very few people that get into terrorism without a group. There's a few that figure out how to make bombs themselves, how to write their own ideology. We had 2 in the States. I don't think I ever heard of any in recent days in Europe. There was one I know of in Gaza that organized himself, made his own bomb, figured out how to construct his own bomb. He wanted to go for Hamas. He followed Hamas ideology, but he didn't bomb himself for Hamas because Hamas, his brother had beat him to it, and they only take one brother out of the family. But usually there's a group, and the group provides you with your targeting, provides you with a sense of belonging, provides you with how to make a bomb. And it may not be that you're actually directed by that group. Nowadays you might be reading Inspire magazine, or you might be reading Debate, and they tell you how to make a bomb, they tell you who to target, they tell you who to hate, but still, a group is operating. And then there's an ideology. And with terrorism, terrorism is by definition political. So they're steering you towards viewing the world as having certain problems, and then viewing the world with a solution. And the solution is terrorism. And they jump you over a hurdle to enact your violence towards innocent civilians by telling you, these people are your enemy, this cause is so important that you don't have to follow normal norms of society. You can kill civilians. And in the case of ISIS, in the case of Al-Qaeda, they argue that Islam is under attack, Islamic people are under attack, Islamic lands are under attack. And they create all kinds of evidence for that. So they show you things that are happening in Kashmir, that the Indians are doing this and that. They show you what's happening in Gaza, in West Bank. They show you dead kids, Israeli missiles that kill people. They don't show you the reverse, of course. They show you things that are happening in Chechnya. And now they show you things that are happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if they're operating here in Europe, they tell you, well, you know you're not welcome in Europe if you're Muslim. You know that Geert Wilders wants to deport all of you. And why would you want to stay in a country that's Kafir? Don't you know you have a duty to come to the land of the Khalifa? You have a duty to fight Shahad to the very end of time. And some people can argue back to that. They know their religion well. Some people know their politics well, but others are easily brought into it. Then there's a group, an ideology, there's social support. Usually we won't do things that nobody else is doing. You know, that's called non-conventional, right? And most of us dress like the other people around us, eat like the other people around us, use, when you're in college, you probably use swear words and are comfortable, but then you go home and you're around your family, and you don't have social support for speaking that way, so you speak more politely, right? And so we look at other people, and we have things like social mirroring going on, of what is appropriate for me and what can I get away with. And in the case of terrorism, it used to be that people banded together in little cells, and they would egg each other on and say, we need to explode something, we need to kill somebody, we need to kidnap somebody, we need to behead somebody, because these things are so wrong, and we're going to fight for justice, and this is the way we're going to do it, we're going to make our statement, we're going to make people afraid of us, and we're going to go forward. And nowadays, you get your social support by your computer, by your telephone. You can do it right now. You could be on the internet, getting on some ISIS channel on Telegram, and you could find a whole bunch of like-minded people. A lot of them would be living in Syria. Some of them might be in Australia, maybe they're in Canada. You can have a whole cell interacting with you, just like I told you with IRL. The guy was in Syria talking to her. A woman out in Washington State. She was being run by people that were on a different continent. So social support these days, because we're in such an interconnected and virtual world, can happen over the internet. It doesn't mean that it doesn't also happen in person. I recently interviewed a Belgian woman that had gone to ISIS. She lived in Charleroi. Her name's Laura. And Laura told me that when her marriage was falling apart and she was being left by her first true love and left with a little kid, she was heartbroken. So she put up a profile on Facebook and basically was putting out a cry of pain. And here I am, single with a kid. And the ISIS guys found it right away and wrote to her and said, you know, it was because you were married to a kafir, and he didn't take you seriously. He doesn't follow Islam. And if you had been in a good Islamic group, this would have never happened to you. And can we propose to you some guys? Why don't you come to Brussels and meet me at least? So the guy gets her to come to Brussels and tries to seduce her into a relationship first, and in the long term to coming to Iraq and Syria. And he makes all kinds of promises to her, all of them false. You'll be rich, we'll give you nurses training, your son will go to a really good school, you'll have a great life. I guess he promised her marriage and that one did come through. And but first he offered himself up as her potential marriage partner, although he was already married, and she didn't want to be a second wife. So she ended up with someone else and did go and found out that it was all lies. But anyway, the four things are group ideology, social support, and then there's individual vulnerabilities. So I was just telling you about Laura. She was vulnerable because she'd been jilted. She wanted to have a man in her life. She wanted to have a father for her child. She wanted to have a good and prosperous life. And someone told her that the way to get that was to go into ISIS. She was naive and she believed it. Some people are really worried about injustices in the world. They're watching things on the internet. They watch my last president, who I really loved, compared to the new one, was known as the drone king. And he was responsible for a lot of drone kills of terrorist leaders. But sadly, terrorists like to live with their families and don't separate themselves out into separate barracks, you know, with the big T on the top. So when you come with the drone, you can kill only the terrorist. And sometimes their family members were killed with them. And sometimes these pictures showed up on drone feed. And people watched them and said, wow, that seems unjust. I don't like seeing a little baby killed in a drone kill. Or you see on videos things that happen in Gaza. How could they pound the Palestinians so hard in Gaza? Or you see things that are evidence of discrimination against Muslims. You see things that aren't right. And most people deal with that politically, deal with it by speaking up, deal with it by, you know, engaging in a normal and healthy manner. But others start to get channeled into, well, maybe the answer to that is to create an alternative world order. Maybe the answer to that is the caliphate. Maybe the answer to that is to fight back with violence. And as they go into that, they narrow their focus, they start getting all their news from that point of view, and they become extremely vulnerable to becoming terrorists themselves. Some people want things, some want romance, they want a relationship, some want to belong. They aren't doing so well in their lives and they want to belong. Others live in conflict zones. So when we look at individual vulnerabilities, where are you living? Are you in Kosovo? Did you experience the war sometime in your life and now you're watching what's happening in Syria and getting crazy because nobody's doing anything about it at that time when it first erupted, and you feel a responsibility to go and help? Or do you live in Brussels and, you know, there's spirit on the corner and chocolates and maybe you don't like how loose society is and you feel like upset about what's going on and you're looking at issues of justice? Or do you live in a true conflict zone where people have destroyed your home, hurt your family members, tortured someone that you know? In that case, maybe you just want revenge. Maybe you're traumatized. Maybe you want to exit from life because you have PTSD so badly, and here's this terrorist group saying to you, you can fight, I will equip you, and you will no longer be in pain. And the 5 minutes that it takes you to walk to your target and pull your cord and yell Allah Akbar, you will be in paradise. And for some people, especially when they live in conflict zones, that's attractive. But the four things all come together. And people that are, you can have vulnerabilities in a population and no resonance with terrorism. So let's say we go over to former Soviet Union, we go to Belarus, and you find some of the same things. People living under an oppressive government, people living with injustices, people really angry about their daily lives, people frustrated, they can't get ahead in their lives. But there's no terrorist ideology and there's no terrorist group operating, so they never think to go become a terrorist. The things have to come together. So, and you can also have a terrorist group operating and spitting out their ideology and it not catching anybody. It has to catch something inside of you. And it has to reward you in some way. So let's see. Okay, I guess I went through that already, or that too. Oh, I guess we can. So with ISIS, the main thing that's going on is that they're offering an alternative world vision. They're offering a dream of a utopian state. And we have seen that as far as ISIS holding territory, that's rapidly being crushed. But I'm not sure the dream is being crushed, because when we've talked to people that have come back from ISIS, they still harbor the dream. And what we found was that when people go into ISIS, they first go into Sharia training, the men. The women go into a woman's house. If they're a foreign fighter, they're asked, would you like to join the Hizbah, which is the morality police? If they're not married, how can we set you up for marriage? And a lot of people have the false conception that a woman goes there and she gets raped. That's not the case. They put her very chastely in the woman's house, and they offer her marriage, and her first marriage, she's free to choose. After she's married, if her husband's killed, she's more heavily coerced to marry the second, the third, the fourth. I mean, there was one woman that we heard of, didn't speak to directly, had been married 11 times. But the men go to Sharia training, where they learn the ISIS version of Islam, and at the end of their Sharia training, they have a prisoner brought to them, and to show their commitment, to show that they fought on, they have their prisoner. And we know that ISIS likes to film everything, and we know that ISIS has shown these films of people committing crimes, sometimes to hurt them when they left the group. They also go to weapons training. Everybody that comes gives their phone in. Their phone details are downloaded, and they're asked, what have you been in your services? Do you know how to handle weapons? Were you taught anything? And if you've been taught, they try to use your skills. But what they sell you in the Sharia training, and what they possibly sold you before you even came, is that you're part of a cosmic battle. This is, by the way, from Brussels. You're going to build the caliphate. We're going to build it at any cost. We are in a revolution, as I told you earlier. And there's end times thinking that we're going to fight until we bring the new world in. And we've had this steady stream of fighters. We've had them from lots of countries, Belgium included. And now we're starting to see them come back. So the interesting thing with them coming back is, are they going to come back and declare themselves? How battle-hardened are they? Are they traumatized? Will they fit back into society? And you have to tell yourself, if someone had a troubled life to begin with, that they somehow resonated to the ISIS ideology, if they come back, what shape, here you can have this already. Start this. What shape are they in when they come back? They're probably heavily traumatized. They're weapons trained if they're men, and they're ideologically indoctrinated. All the things that were in place to make them vulnerable to go still exist. It's probably even worse. They may now have a prison sentence, they may now have a label on them, they may feel really alienated even though they've willingly come back, and they may be put in prison for a good long time. So what do we do with these people? Are they going to reseed themselves throughout society? And are they going to declare themselves, or are they going to come back under the cover? In Kosovo, we were told that some of the ISIS guys would go on social media, have a fake death, declare themselves killed in action, big mourning time. They're, the guys that are supposed to treat for them And lo and behold, they're alive and well. And they come back and surprise the security services who thought they were dead. So as far as defectors, not everyone that returns is a defector. And I think that in the interest of time, I'm going to move ahead on these ones. One of the things that we really need to think about is that it's always easier to prevent than to deter. Remember when they were trying to catch Salah Abdullah? I mean, it's amazing to me that he was able to hide out in Molenbeek as long as he was. And it tells you that there were some people that were willing to help him, or willing to keep his secret. And if prevention had been done well, maybe they wouldn't have been. And he was really hard to catch, and there were a lot of consequences that went with that. And one of the things that we need to be thinking about is that in almost all of the cases of serious terrorists in recent years that have fallen for ISIS or Al-Qaeda, they've given warning signals to their families. They've changed suddenly, sometimes in their dress, sometimes, growing a beard, putting on a headscarf. Although growing a beard and putting on a headscarf and following Islam is no great danger to society, it's only a danger if they also start spouting out things like, hateful things and really narrow focus, suddenly insisting that everybody follows a certain way. And family members, of course, are aware of that. And who do they turn to? And here in Belgium, I talked to mothers that told me, I called the police. I was worried that my son was going to go to Syria. And the police didn't act quickly. The police didn't take it seriously. The police said, he's not a minor. I can't do anything. And lo and behold, he disappeared to Syria. So shouldn't there be helplines that you can call? Shouldn't there be social workers and moms that can act quickly and maybe even not sit in their offices and wait for somebody to bring the person to them, but actually go and make a family visit? And if they can't talk to the person, because sometimes they'll refuse to talk to anyone else, to you and others. And make an intervention. And now that's starting to happen, and I'm really glad that it is. This, by the way, is a picture of Shannon Connolly. She's a Catholic girl that converted, fell in love with the ISIS fighter over in Syria, Tunisia. Was Skyping with him. Her dad happened to walk by the Skype chat once, and she said, "Oh, Dad, my man has a question for you." And because it's proper that he proposed to the father, her ISIS fighter future husband actually proposed to Shannon's father. And of course he was like, what's going on? And in her case, the FBI had talked to her 13 times, but unsuccessfully. And she was quite convinced that she was on a mission, that was a good mission. And she eventually did board a plane to go to Syria, but her father called the FBI for the final takedown, and she was arrested trying to go to join a terrorist organization. But for me, I think it's such a pity that she ended up in high security prison when couldn't someone have been called in to talk with her and try to talk about it? So now I'd like to show a few videos, and I'd like to tell you the point of these videos. Everyone that we've interviewed so far, of our 43 ISIS guys or women, we've tried to get them to agree to be interviewed in front of a video camera. And the point of that is later we want to take it and cut it into little pieces and try to make something that we could put on the internet that could fight back against ISIS' prolific presence. And we don't have the same capabilities that they do, although we're starting to develop it. Because as I told you, when they put their things out, we put our videos up on YouTube. You can find them under our center. It's ICSVE. And when we put them out, we don't know necessarily who's watched them. And we put them out in multiple languages because we want to get all the language categories that ISIS is recruiting in. But we don't know who watches them. We don't contact them. We don't offer them something and try to seduce them to completely change. Instead, we just put something out that looks like ISIS. We name them pro-ISIS names. You're not going to see it, the normal opening starts, it looks like, well, maybe I'll show you the opening too. It sings Allah Akbar, which means God is greatest. You can take it any way you want. but we hope that they think they have an ISIS video, and that if they've been watching ISIS videos, suddenly they're confronted with someone that's been in ISIS, that's authentic, and that can tell them the true story, and hopefully prevent them from a choice that's possibly lethal for them, possibly lethal for us. So just a second, I'll load that up.
لا عجبوني كثير، بس بعدين ما عدا. درسنا انه كتاب يعلمنا منو ربك ومنو رسولك وشنو دينك. المعسكر ظلينا بيه بس شهر، لا عسكري، لا حنية ولا شي، تدريب صعب وضرب سلاح، واللي ينسى حاله وقت انه شايل السلاح الحقيقي يحط ايده على الكبسة، يحط الخرطوم بصبعه يطاجه هيج شوية لا يكسر له. مو أكثر من الكبار، أصغر بيهم 15 16. ما جو بالبيكام وخذوا قالوا له اليوم القصاص عليك، انت بدك تقص الكافر المرتد. ركب بالبيكام وراح خذ الزرقاوية معاه، وصل غادي ما مربط هو من دينه، قاضبه من شعره، حط السكينة على راسه وبلش يسوي بيه هيك لمن ما قص راسه. بيعام تنزعج بقلبها بس ما جرب يسولف. اللي يفرح غصبا عنهم، كلهم بدهم يفرحون يصيحون الله أكبر، بس ينزعج ما يجرب يقول ينزعج أو منهم أو يقولون ما يصير يتعاقب. أنزعج بالمية، يحطونهم بالقفص، يجي 5 6 يسكرون عليهم القفص، ينزلون القفص بالمية، يبون ما يقربون يفطسون ويطالعونهم، يظلون يعذبونهم هيك، ما حد يعرف شنو ذنبهم أو شنو هم. ويحطون الناس بالسيارة ويضربونها بالقاذف. شفت قمت أعرف إنه يدربون عجان صغار ما يعرفون كل شيء، والأول عجان صغار اللي يروحون على التفجير يعرفون التفجير ما يروحون. قمت أشوفهم يدربون عجان على التفجير، قلت نهارين أو 3 يدربوني يعني زاد، أبطل خير ما يدربوني. عارف من معسكرنا راحوا من الكبار والصغار حوالي 15 على التفجير، ما كلها تقول لا حد دخل الجنة. قاموا اللي يجون قديمين علينا نتعرف عليهم، عندهم هواتف، شوفونا على الانترنت انه عالم جاء تقول تفجير حرام، جاء تموت عالم ما لها شغل ولازم يموتون ما جاء يجيهم شيء. ومن هذا حكي نسمع عالم ما لها شغل من الذبحة وصغار كبار. خسرت وطني كل شيء. أقول كل طفل بالعالم بدي أقولهم لا تنضمون للتنظيم هذا. التنظيم هذا مو مسلم، هذا كفار يذبحون الأبرياء وكل شيء يسوونه، ومو جايين مشان الجهاد، جايين بس مشان المصاري، واللي ينضم لهم ما يقدر يقشرهم بسهولة ويسوون حالهم مسلمين، يدربون العالم على التفجير ويقولوا تدخل على الجنة، وهذا كله كذب ما بي شيء منه صحيح. وحاول أقنعهم إنه ما ينضمون مع الدولة.
أمور يعني أول ما إجوا تحسها طيبة جدا جدا، تحس إنه فعلا إسلام. قلنا نروح على الجامع يعني مسويات، يجي شرعي يعطي ثاني يعني دروس قرآنية كذا. هاي كان هو يخطب أو يعطي درس للعالم هيك يعني ينصحهم إنه على الدولة الإسلامية وكذا، والدولة على حق وما تظلم وكذا، وتاخذ وتعيش يعني تاخذ راتب وتعيش بيه. نصحني إنه أصير بالدولة. يوم فرزونا أنا قال لي أنت أمي يعني حطوني حرس للحسبة. باليوم يجيبون يعني شي 100 شخص، هذا رجال، يا دخان يا اما مثلا تكون مرته مو منقبة زاد يجيبونه، فوتونهم جوا على جلد وقتل، نهارين ثلاثة يعيفونهم، نهارين ثلاثة. السجن بيه تقريبا 475 سبايا، يزيديات بي من العراق، ببعضهم يقاتلون مثلا مع الجيش العراقي جوازهن ياخذونهن، بي من سوريا نفس العملية. خيو يوم فتنا على كوريدور أنا صدمت، يعني ضحك كله نساء. قسم اليزيديات والله مرة نسوان يبكين، ليش تبكين انت؟ تقول لي عفت ولد صغار يعني عمره شي سنة سنتين وجابوني ليه جاي، هذا اسلامكم انتو؟ تقول لي. كان اقول لا حول ولا قوة، وحطيت باردتي على كتفي كان اطلع اوقف على الباب، يعني ما كملت في الجو. هذول يوم جاءهم خبر انه جاء امر تسليمكم سبايا، بالكوريدور اسمع اصوات وكذا وفرحانين يعني. الفرحة قام العسكري يجيب كل 10 مهاجرين، طبعا من كثرهم ما يصير دفعة واحدة يفوتون على السجن، لا ما تصير، يجيب كل 10 يفوتون، احنا نكون برا على الباب، يفوتون على الكوريدور، يختارون ينقون السبية، كل من يختار سبيته تلهم من ايده وتطلع. وعلى ظلم 3 أيام على المكوك هذا، كل واحد يتف واحدة من ايدها وتطلع. نصحنا قال اي كلمة تطلع لبرا تكليكو راسك ينقطع. اولا نفسجة المساجين انه حاطين بمخهن النساء جمال كافتهن انه انت راح ينذبحن، انتن كفار، انتن ما عايشين من الاسلام، انتن على الذبح. يعني تا يوم تصير شغلة السبايا تهون عليه، انه احسن انه تفكر انه اشوى من الذبح. طبعا شوفها قاعدة بالزاوية ذالة نفسها موطي راسها بالأرض، عينها ما تطلع لفوق وعينها بالأرض، دمعتها بعينها، وظل هيك تنام، حتى نوم ما تنام يعني نظامي، تلقاها بالزاوية عاملة هيك ونايمة. يوم نشوف المنظر هذا نشتهي تقتلهم كلهم، بس حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. قبل ما انشق صارت معي حتى انه فات هذا السوداني، اختار واحدة عمرها 15 سنة، والله اغتصبها، صار معها نزيف، وجابوا سيارة اسعاف واخذوها، صار معها نزيف داخلي وتوفيت هاي. طلعوها برا وقالوا ما حد يتكلم بشي خالص، السبايا سبايا واعملوا ما يحلو لكم فيه، يعني ما نقدر نسولف شي خالص. وفكرت بالانشقاق يعني عاد. انا بلشت افكر انه انشق يعني. ايه انا خيو طلبت اجازة انه اروح 3 أيام على البيت ارتاح، بعد ما ظليت اسبوع. نزلت على البيت، حسيت حالي تعبان، ماني مرتاح، ما لي نفس اكل، يعني الواحد يعتبر انه خواته، يعني ليش كذا يصير. ارجع على مكتب، والنهار الثاني نزلت انا على البيت، يسألوني خواتي ومرتي انه شو قصتك، يعني انت كأنه بشي ما تحكي يعني وكذا. حكيت لهم القصة كلها انه هيك وهيك صار. قالوا لي بأسرع وقت لازم نطلع على تركيا، لانه اذا صار شي عليك انت ممكن نروح احنا زاد، يعني مو بس هذين خواتنا الراحة. كل فترة احلم انه معرتين راسي يذبحونه بالسكين وافز من النوم، هاي قام تصير معي. لا والله اذا افكر لانه ما يروح الكابوس هذا، ما يروح، بدي يضل بالذهن يعني ما يروح. اذا افكر بيه اتعقد، وانا احاول انسى يعني. كابوس ما ينسى يعني. شوف تتذكر انه المرة شلون قاعدة بالزاوية دمعتها بعينها وما تقدر تعملها شيء او كذا، ما تقدر تنسى. انصح كل شباب العرب انه لا يجون على سوريا، اللي بده يجي على الدولة الاسلامية يحط بباله اغتصاب وقتل الفقراء، قتل المساكين، ترى ظلم وبظلم. واذا تفكر بس تجي وتفكر تريد ترجع راح يقتلونك، يعني ما بمفك. بس فتت بالرمال، اعتبرها رمال متحركة، بس فتت غصت، ما هي دولة اسلامية. هذا اللي احكي يعني.
Are protected from joining. We also have a team in London, Dennis Speckhard and Lauren Bodo, who've been putting these videos. They've been able to search out who on Facebook is endorsing ISIS, who's sharing ISIS materials, who likes ISIS. So they've been doing some of the same things that ISIS has been doing. And then once they follow them for a while, throwing our videos at them. And some of them unfriend the fake profile that our research fellows had. Some of them get called infidel, murtad, kafir, that kind of thing. But others actually watch them and share them with their groups and seem to be touched by them. So we're hoping that they're useful for prevention. What we hear in the people that we've talked to, they bought into our brand. They believed that ISIS could address injustices in the world. They believed that there could be such a thing as a caliphate. It's a wonderful dream. But the ones that went, that we've had the opportunity to talk to, had that dream shattered pretty badly by their real life experiences. And we hope to shatter the brand as completely as we can. And that's our little piece of the fight against ISIS. You can find all the videos on YouTube. You're free to use them as you like. We'd love them if you posted them on your social media. If you spread them around, that's great. You never know who you touch in your circle that might touch somebody else that makes a difference. So happy to answer questions. My colleagues are here. They're happy to answer questions. And excited to see all these young people studying topics like this, because who knows what you'll do. Hope it's good.
Thank you again for this presentation.